Um, yeah, so I run Mind Over Tech. I have a background as a Buddhist practitioner as well for the last 15, 20 years. And actually, the work that I do at Mind Over Tech really kind of came out of my own personal journey as someone who's a fairly undisciplined practitioner who finds some benefit whenever they sit on their cushion and was deeply frustrated whenever they then went into their everyday using their smartphone, their laptop, the tools of the trade of a technologist, and feeling like it was really difficult to integrate some of the benefits, whether that was kind of clarity of mind, presence or whatever, when working in a digital environment. And that's something that I still struggle with myself, but kind of created Mind Over Tech as a way to actually help non-Buddhist professionals who are having to work in the craziness of the modern digital workplace actually try and get any kind of different perspective on how they might be able to relate to the technology and the tools which they use. So what I'm going to share is kind of, it'll actually be touching on many things that have seeds that have already been planted in the first session. And this is kind of a combination of some of the kind of lines of thinking that have developed from the work that we do, but also a very explicit insight into like the way that we present that to professionals in a non-Buddhist way, but which is really trying to articulate a lot of the principles which we've heard about, with the aim of trying to give people some mindsets and tools to actually try and navigate some of this themselves. So yeah, AI is a mirror to understand ourselves. And okay, this is working. So Chris was already mentioning in the last session about the idea that there is tools and technologies, and that actually kind of tools might be some things that we could put down, but technologies might actually kind of have a life of their own to a certain extent. And that's very much something which we talk about and kind of often present it through the terms of like an instrumentalist view. So like is a tool like a hammer something which is just a tool, something which you can pick up and put down, and it's entirely down to the user as to how and when that's used. Thinking about tools and technologies in this way is one perspective, which I think we can all relate with. But then more of a deterministic view would be that any technology inherently has kind of, if not a will, an active shape on society which takes place. So this is, Ford's early kind of production line, the creation of which implicitly paved the way almost inevitably for the reduction in kind of skilled manual labor. Cars before were kind of made by hand, kind of hammered out of big sheets of metal. That's basically like the moment the production line was created, you could say it kind of determined the outcome of the way that people were crafting stuff. Another way of thinking about this, this is an early map from the Babylonian era. So kind of carving lines into clay. And at the time, not many people really knew how to read maps. It was a new technology. But as more people, and if you think about what a map is, it's a completely different way of seeing the world. It kind of takes this rich experience and puts it in this very abstract kind of 2D plane. But as soon as communities learned how to use these things and get around, actually their brains changed and they were better at abstract kind of reasoning, which then went on to lead to other insights and so on. So actually, there's this quote here from Father John Colkin, who was a Catholic priest and also kind of a media teacher. We shape our tools and thereafter they shape us. This is a deeply interdependent relationship that we have with technology. They're not just tools which sit there and then, it's deeply interdependent, which is obviously something which Buddhists know a little bit about, or at least like to talk about. I think it's really important to understand that this is the kind of foundation of our relationship with technology. I think the other, another interesting thing to consider is the fact that any technology extends our human capacities to do things. And you can put them in broad categories. Imagine like a racing car might extend your capacity to move at pace, or a microscope might extend your capacity to kind of see things in great detail. In general, with very general terms, digital technologies extend the mind. If you consider, the last time that you were working on a screen for a serious amount of time, like where are you at that moment in time? apart from the room or the place of the time, actually, you know, it's you and the screen, and you're pretty much up in your head. And again, Chris was talking about kind of technology or AI as being a karmic kind of catalyst. And in this sense, you know, I think all technology amplifies things. Digital technologies, this is before even really talking about AI, is definitely kind of a catalyzing, extending our capacity, at least for conceptual thought. And it's, yeah, I think we all know that feeling, you know, once it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you've had a very busy day and you kind of step away from your devices and, you know, we're up here energetically. This is where we've been and what's been going on. But also it's interesting to consider what do we mean, and also what humanity generally might consider we mean when we talk about a mind that's being extended. Like, we've already kind of dipped our toes in this, like, what is consciousness question. But before we get to that level, actually just thinking about the mind in general, how does the general public kind of think about mind? Quite often, if you ask most people, they'll kind of start by talking about their brain or pointing up here. And also, interestingly, not only that, they'll kind of relate to their brain kind of as a computer. And this is not unusual. If you think about throughout history, people have tended to understand and relate to the human body in relation to the most cutting-edge technologies of the time. At the time when the four humours were kind of leading the scientific view of medicine, that was the time when hydraulics were also kind of really taking off, in this idea of liquids being things which can kind of manipulate. And then around the Descartesian period, kind of clockwork mechanisms being a useful analogy which people use for the brain. So most people kind of think about the brain as being where our mind is, and that it's basically like a computer, has inputs and outputs. And you know, that's definitely spurred on by kind of visions of tech leaders. You've got people like Elon Musk and others building out companies like Neuralink that are literally looking to put brain implants, like thinking in terms of the brain as inputs and outputs, and that if we map it from a neurological perspective, we can understand the mind in its entirety and then kind of engage with it in this way. But the mind isn't just that. You know, I mentioned before, we kind of, that 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you've just powered through your emails, you've kind of been in and out of whatever social media platforms, your mind's spinning. You step away and then you look out the window and you happen to notice a random reflection in the window, and suddenly it cuts through all of that kind of busy thinking, and suddenly you're just there and there's kind of no conceptual thought, but you're still there. Your mind doesn't disappear. It's just a whole other quality of your mind which is just shining through and experiencing this moment, and it might last a brief glimpse, a moment in time, but this is just, you know, pointing towards one aspect of many different kind of elements of what mind is. And I'm not, we've got Jan coming up next, who's you know, far more qualified than me, and will do a great job in kind of like digging into this further. But I think for me, what's really interesting is begin to have a conversation with anybody about their phones, about technology. They're instantly interested, and it's an incredibly powerful way. I mean, you were mentioning this as well, Chris, before, about how quickly you kind of get to talking about very existential topics when we're talking about this. Actually, to consider what's happening when I look at my phone, what is my mind, and then to kind of expand your curiosity to that is something which, when we run sessions in companies, happens all the time. It's incredibly disarming for people. So it was already mentioned, this idea that yeah, mind could be many things beyond just our conceptual thoughts. In Buddhism, it is kind of taught that you know, our conceptual thoughts are appearance of mind, and that there is essence of mind belief that. And you know, the kind of metaphor of clouds in the sky is often used here. But the reality of most people's lives is that they're not there most of the time. We are working all day long. If we're not working, we're relaxing, we're unwinding with YouTube. I'm talking about myself here, by the way. Like, the reason why I'm doing any of this is because I struggle terribly with this. And we're basically habituating. And it's not just us. Like, we all know technology is designed in ways to manipulate behavior. but we are habituating this deep stirring of the conceptual mind constantly, and this is where we're experiencing a lot of our reality from. There was a study done by a company called D-Scout, and they installed an app on people's phones to try and work out, okay, anecdotally, we all feel like we're on our devices all the time, but what's the reality of like how often am I touching my device? The average user, according to the study, touches their phone 2,617 times a day. And I'm not saying so first of all, let's break that down. What's a touch? If you write like a WhatsApp message, maybe that's already many touches within there. Like, I'm not saying large numbers is bad, but what's really interesting if you dig into this is frequency. It's not 1 or 2 long blocks of using your phone in a day. It's actually in waking hours, from the moment you wake, from the moment you go to sleep, once every 6 minutes, just constantly, this is the average, engaging with a device. And it might be just quickly unlocking and checking the time, but it's never just that, because there's always a notification waiting for you. And in this sense, actually, as I said before, the way that the combination, this is an interdependent relationship, the combination with some of the way that technology is designed, but also just our behavioral patterns and the way that we interdependently engage with that is kind of resulting in this. And this study, by the way, was done in 2014. So that was over a decade old. You know, more recently, we have apps like Sora. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Sora. So this is the social network released by OpenAI recently. The unique thing about this social network is every video on it is AI created. So you open the app, you scan your face, and you prompt, like you do on any other network, or any other kind of LLM tool. I'd like to see a video of myself high-fiving Obama on the moon. And it will create this, and then you can kind of share that. This is a still of the Queen about to body slam Einstein in a wrestling match, which someone kind of created and shared. This kind of stuff is all over the place. And the thing is, you know that it's ridiculous. You know it's fake. You know it's ridiculous. But it's really compelling. You just kind of like can't help just watch it, because one is like, this is amazing that this exists. But also, again, this is still very kind of new, like relatively as a technology. Of course, it's all being designed, you know, for our attention. The attention economy already exists. This is just catalyzing this process. So there's even before AI, from mind over text perspective, and you know the work we've been doing, there's already been a massive risk to people's attention, how they manage their attention, where they invest their attention. That's definitely getting worse. Another area which has already been mentioned is around critical thinking. I don't know if you read this story recently. So this is Deloitte, large Big Four consultancy. They had to pay back nearly $500,000 to the Albanese government because they basically used LLM to put together some of their report, and loads of the references in there were just wrong, and basically they were just like, yeah, sorry, we kind of made a mistake there. And so this is, you know, not someone doing their homework and like handing it in like a little bit late. This is at quite serious levels, where you'd kind of hope that people are doing a little bit at least to do even the basics of critical thinking. So if it's happening at that level, like if you just, again, a little bit of this talk is taking everything and bringing it back, particularly lots of us are practitioners, about kind of our own world, doing the inner work of our own minds, and considering as we engage with AI tools, whether intentionally or not, even in micro ways over time in this interdependent relationship, what happens to my ability to assess information, to think critically, and so on. And then a third area, which I think is also impactful, I'm not saying these are the only three, but this is really important things to consider, is our sense of agency, like not being passive, a kind of ownership of ourselves. This is the Prime Minister of Norway playing Pokemon Go in a parliamentary session a number of years ago. And again, I'm not showing this to shame her. Genuinely not. I've already done my confessions. Like, I know this is me in a meeting with my business partner finishing a chess.com move. Not because I want to be doing it, but because actually this is a deeply ingrained habit, and like we're becoming masters in continual partious attention, fractioning our awareness and multitasking. And there's actually amazing research which shows that multitasking, doesn't work. It's not efficient. We can't actually do it. Multitasking is a computer term. It's not possible for the mind to multitask. But actually, people who multitask regularly having, but the more you do it, the higher your opinion is that you're able to do it really well. There's this kind of weird blind spot which comes with it. So again, you know, I'm saying I see myself in this. I think we all know this to be true in the moments of our day-to-day reality. And I think this is something which is at risk as well. And so something which we try and do when we're, so like for example, quite often we would work with a couple of thousand employees at an organization to try and help them navigate some of these problems in their day-to-day, to try and help them get a little bit back in terms of well-being, in terms of human connection, and actually agency, and being able to kind of be effective at the things which are valuable to them. And from my perspective, this is about trying to develop intention, trying to develop awareness and intention in action in our digital lives day to day. And actually so really there's this kind of underlying question, is our AI use aligned with what we value? So there's a few things to say here. So first of all, like we've got a session coming up on AI alignment later, which is, you know, all about, you know, how can we make these AI tools align with and embody these values and qualities which are important to us. But this is an interdependent relationship, and we need to do the inner work ourselves as well. Like, how are we actually aligning the decisions that we're making? Of course, regulation needs to happen, apps need to be built, AI needs to be built in ways which serve us, but there's always going to be a point where that stops, where we have responsibility for our side of the relationship. And actually, how intentional are we being about aligning the way that we use our digital tools with the things which we value? And that's quite difficult to get people to begin to think about, but also to give them the sense that they actually have a tangible way of making a difference with this. And something that we do is actually draw upon, we don't use these terms, but we draw upon some kind of Buddhist tools, the 3 wisdom tools. I forgot I had this slide, I'll talk about this really quickly. I think this points a little bit to how difficult it can be to be intentional with aligning technology with our goals and values, because technology can do many different things. This same kind of smartphone device can literally help me pay my bills, function in the world, earn my living, research things to be able to deliver a talk like this. At the same time, it can allow me to waste hours of my life on things which I don't care about, make me feel terrible about myself. But both these things exist in the same place. And actually with technology, with any technology, it comes with a massive gain, and it always comes with a loss at the same time. And the story I wanted to tell here was actually around the invention of the Gutenberg press, where there was a massive gain. So there was someone called Johannes Trittimus, who was a Christian monastic abbot. And he was he was quite an esoteric chap, but he was really into, well, he was very, very learned, very well read. He amassed thousands of books, kind of library in his monastery. And the printing press, in one way, presented a massive gain for him, because it meant that the Bible could be printed en masse and distributed, and that kind of do work which he was trying to do. At the same time, he wrote something called In Praise of Scribes, which was acknowledging that actually the lifelong work of a monastic to handwrite out in illuminated text the Bible as an act of devotion, as an act of internalizing kind of his faith, was actually at loss here. And it's not to say that one is good or bad, but these are just the facts. These are the kind of 2 different truths of this one situation. That was with the printing press. Like, all of this is true with every technology that we're using today and is coming up on the horizon. So as an individual, to try and unpick this and understand where the value in technology lies and where it doesn't is incredibly difficult. And it needs active thought always, all of the time. And that's true whether you are, I've not got much time left, I'll finish up in 30 seconds. Whether you are a Buddhist practitioner, I think this is, you know, crucial work that we all need to be really honest about ourselves. Like, when I'm stopped doing my daily practice and I'm off my cushion, like, what am I doing with my mind for the rest of my hours of my day? And it can be really hard to pay attention because of all of the reasons I've talked about, because technology, the digital realm, is so slippery, and it's very difficult to keep this self-awareness. But even just for individuals who are working with technology all day long, these skills can make all the difference in terms of yeah, their well-being, and they'll be able to cope in the day. So I'll jump over these. I think we all know, well, the 3 wisdom tools in Buddhism are listening and hearing, contemplation, reflection, and meditation, or kind of integration perhaps. And these are tools which we can really use to actually kind of help bring some of the principles that we've kind of considered here and bring them into our lived experience. At Mind Over Tech, we've created all sorts of different education programs, but one is this tool called the Digital Habit Lab, which is encouraging people to use a slightly adapted version of the 3 wisdom tools to observe their behavior day to day and raise their awareness in their digital life, to reflect on that critically and try and understand how is that aligned with what I value and how is it not, and then to integrate that through experimentation. So this is a very brief example of an experiment. Delay the urge to search. I think you all know that, you know, you're at a dinner conversation, you're in a really good conversation, oh, who was that actress in that thing? Like, and you just quickly look it up and you can get that information, but what value is that really adding to your conversation? And at the same time, what is missed in that moment? This experiment is just to say, across the course of a day, every time you have that urge to look up information, try and use it as an opportunity to notice, and to notice, why do I want this information? How important is it? Don't do the search, write it down in a book, and at the end of the day, come back and do your searches then. And it's just a small experiment, but at the end of the day, half of them aren't relevant to you anymore, or you might think, what, like, I don't even remember this. And actually, it helps you just see and understand the subtle ways that our behaviors actually impact our day-to-day experience. Yes, so that is kind of using AI as a mirror to understand ourselves, whether it's AI or any future technology. I believe these are skills which all humans really need for the future, is to actually kind of use these digital tools around us as a way to deepen our own understanding of ourselves. Thank you. Sorry, I went a bit over.